It was Christmas Eve, the cafe buzzing with last-minute shoppers and the smell of fresh pastries filling the air. She had worked there for years, pouring coffee and smiles with a dedication no one seemed to notice until today. Without warning, her manager called her over, delivering the kind of news that freezes your heart. She was fired. In the middle of the holiday rush, in front of curious customers, her world seemed to crumble. Tears welled up, and for a moment, she felt completely invisible. Just another face in a crowd. But across the room, a man sitting quietly at a corner table watched everything unfold. A single dad, juggling the chaos of his own life, yet somehow noticing hers. Something in her eyes, the mix of shock and hurt, sparked a reaction in him that no one could have predicted. He stood up, every step deliberate, commanding attention without a word. The cafe seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with tension, as everyone wondered what would happen next. Who was this man, and why was he about to change the course of her night and, maybe her life forever? What he did next left everyone stunned, and the story was only beginning. The single dad reached the counter, his presence calm but firm, and the murmurs in the cafe grew louder. She glanced at him, unsure what to expect. He wasn't just a customer, there was a quiet authority about him, the kind that made people listen without raising a voice. She tried to steady herself, wiping away a tear and forcing a small, nervous smile. Her mind raced back to the months leading up to this day. She had been working extra shifts to cover bills, staying late to make sure every order was perfect, all while dreaming of something more stable, a future that seemed just out of reach. And yet here she was, discarded in the middle of Christmas Eve, her loyalty ignored, her efforts unnoticed. The injustice of it stung sharply, especially in a place where people came to celebrate joy and warmth. The man at the corner table, sipping his coffee, had noticed more than anyone else, the exhaustion in her posture, the kindness in the way she had treated the regulars, the way she never complained even when the work got overwhelming. He had a story of his own, one that had brought him to this cafe tonight, and for some reason, it seemed fate had drawn their paths together. As he approached the counter, the room held its breath, waiting to see what this stranger would do next. The cafe manager cleared his throat, trying to assert control, but the single dad's calm demeanor made the words falter in midair. He spoke directly, his voice steady but carrying a weight that silenced the bustling room. Questions swirled in the air, customers craned their necks, some whispering to each other, sensing a confrontation that was about to unfold. She watched, heart pounding, unsure whether to hope or brace herself. Meanwhile, memories of her own struggles flitted through her mind. The long nights she spent worrying about rent, the missed family gatherings, the quiet resilience she had shown while smiling through exhaustion. It all felt amplified under the harsh fluorescent lights of the cafe. Every face in the room seemed to blur as the tension mounted. From another corner, a coworker watched nervously, torn between loyalty and fear of the manager's wrath. They had seen her work tirelessly, had witnessed her dedication, but had never stepped forward until tonight. Even the regulars, who usually chatted and laughed over their lattes, felt the shift. Something bigger than a firing was happening, something that hinted at unseen truth and unspoken connections. The single dad leaned closer, his eyes locking with hers. There was a message in that gaze, one that promised intervention but carried a hint of mystery. The cafe seemed suspended in time, everyone waiting, wondering what choice he would make and how it would change everything. The single dad's gaze never wavered, and the cafe felt smaller somehow, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. She could feel every heartbeat in her chest, loud against the hum of the espresso machine and the clatter of cups. The manager shifted uneasily, sensing that control was slipping through his fingers. And for the first time, he looked unsure. Customers leaned forward in their seats, sensing the tension, exchanging whispers that carried across the cafe. Some watched with curiosity, others with sympathy, and a few with barely concealed judgment. Behind the counter, her coworker fidgeted, torn between stepping in and staying invisible. Caught in the storm of uncertainty that had suddenly consumed the space, the man stepped even closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. There was a weight in his words, a hint of something powerful, yet restrained. She noticed the subtle determination in his posture, the way his eyes seemed to see not just her struggle, but every injustice that had led to this moment. The manager's hands trembled slightly as he prepared to speak, but the room seemed to tense in anticipation. Every glance, every movement, felt like the tipping point. She took a shaky breath, her mind racing, knowing that whatever happened next could change her life forever. The single dad was about to act, and the cafe and everyone in it was on the edge of something monumental. Just as the tension seemed unbearable, the cafe door swung open, letting in a gust of cold winter air and a new presence that no one expected. A woman stepped inside, her expression sharp, commanding attention without a word. She scanned the room quickly, her eyes landing on the manager, then flicking to the single dad, and finally resting on the fired barista. A hush fell over the cafe as everyone sensed that this wasn't a random customer. Something bigger was unfolding. The woman approached the counter, her voice firm and deliberate. "I think there's been a serious misunderstanding," she said, but there was a strange undertone in her words, one that suggested she knew far more than anyone else. The manager shifted uncomfortably, realizing that the situation had just escalated beyond his control. He glanced nervously at the single dad, who now stood protectively near her, eyes sharp and alert, ready for whatever was coming. In that moment, the barista realized that her Christmas Eve wasn't just about being fired, it was about secrets, alliances, and unexpected interventions that could change everything. The cafe, once just a backdrop for daily routines, had become a stage for a confrontation that no one would forget. The stakes were higher than ever, and everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see how the next move would unfold. The woman at the counter finally spoke, her tone calm but commanding. "This employee has been with us for years, showing dedication and care that goes far beyond what you've acknowledged," she said, turning to the manager. "And yet, here you are, firing her on Christmas Eve, in front of everyone. That's unacceptable." The cafe went silent, all eyes on the unfolding confrontation. The single dad stepped forward, his presence steady, and added, "She doesn't deserve this. We all see her hard work. Today isn't just about a mistake, it's about fairness." The manager's face flushed, realizing the weight of his actions, the murmurs of the crowd echoing in his ears. There was no arguing, no escape from the truth now. Reluctantly, he nodded, signaling that the firing was officially overturned. Relief washed over her, a mix of gratitude and disbelief. But just as she began to breathe again, the unexpected twist hit. The woman smiled, but her eyes gleamed with a secret she hadn't shared yet. "By the way," she said softly, "I'm the new owner of this cafe, and starting tomorrow, she won't just be working here, she'll be managing the entire team." Gasps filled the cafe, and the barista's jaw dropped. The single dad winked, as if he had known all along. What started as a terrible Christmas Eve had turned into an unimaginable new beginning, proving that sometimes, hope arrives in the most unexpected ways. The barista stood behind the counter one last time that night, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't felt in months. The cafe, once a place of stress and uncertainty, now felt like the start of something entirely new. Her coworkers gathered around, offering congratulations and heartfelt smiles, and even the regular customers lingered, sharing warm words and holiday wishes. The tension of the afternoon had melted into a sense of community and support that made her realize how much she had been valued all along. The single dad stayed at the corner table a little longer, sipping his coffee and smiling quietly as she shared laughs with the new owner. Their earlier connection had sparked more than just an intervention. It had reminded her that sometimes said help and kindness come from unexpected places. She reflected on how quickly life could shift, how moments of injustice could turn into opportunities. If someone stood up when it mattered most, by the time she locked up the cafe, she felt ready for the challenges ahead. From managing the team to opening the second cafe, Christmas Eve had brought chaos, tension, and uncertainty, but it had also delivered hope, empowerment, and a reminder that standing up for what's right can change everything. And as she stepped into the crisp winter night, she knew this was only the beginning of her story.